Stop killing games. This European Citizens Initiative is a ball that won't stop, can't stop, and will never stop rolling. Game preservation's the name of the game, and we have a lot to talk about. Hello everyone, I am Jmulls, and let's talk about game preservation. Stop Killing Games is a European Citizens Initiative, really spearheaded by the YouTube channel Accursed Farms. But what is a European Citizens Initiative? Well, let's just read the webpage right now. Get a greater say in the policies that affect your life. The European Citizens Initiative is a unique way for you to help shape the EU by calling on the European Commission to propose new laws. Once an initiative has reached 1 million signatures, the Commission will decide on what action to take. It's very simple. You just need 1 million signatures. But that is a tall ask. And what Stop Killing Games, or as the initiative is called, Stop Destroying Video Games, is specifically asking for pertains to the ability by video game publishers to disable access to online functionality some games need in order to actually work after the point of purchase. Specifically, on the objectives, the initiative states, this initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in the European Union or related features and assets sold for video games they operate to leave said video games in a functional, playable state. Specifically, the initiative seeks to prevent the remote disabling of video games by the publishers before providing reasonable means to continue functioning of said video games without the involvement from the side of the publisher. This initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said video games, associated intellectual rights, or monetization rights. Neither does it expect the publisher to provide resources for the said video game once they discontinue it while leaving it in a reasonably functional, playable state. This is a common thing we are seeing more and more nowadays, where if a game isn't popular enough or just ends up dying for whatever reason down the line, if the game requires online functionality to actually run, if that gets severed, the game is dead and is no longer playable. We actually just saw a case of this happening. You may remember the old game Anthem from EA. Well, it's getting its servers shut down. According to EA, after careful consideration, we will be sunsetting Anthem on January 12th, 2026. This means that the game will still be playable online for the next 180 plus days. As of today, you can no longer purchase in-game premium currency, but you can still use your remaining balance until the servers go offline. Question: how long will I have to play Anthem? Answer: game servers will be available until January 12th, 2026, at which time the game will no longer be playable. Well, question: why can't I play Anthem in offline mode? Answer: Anthem was designed to be an online-only title, so once the servers go offline, the game will no longer be playable. I mean, what insane timing that we have a case of this happening right as this whole discussion and movement for this European Citizens Initiative kicks off. The timing is outrageous, and Stop Destroying Video Games seeks to address this very problem. For games that are online only, when they are sunsetted or just taken offline, they're no longer playable despite the fact you purchased it. And the way that developers and publishers try to get around this is by saying you bought a license instead of actually owning a product. This stuff can get very murky. And what this European Citizens Initiative seeks to do is to get actual legislatures involved here to prevent this very thing from happening. It doesn't address every concern that advocates for game preservation have with the industry overall, but it's a step. And I want to really hone in on one point here. In my opinion, chances are when it comes to how we get better game preservation, there will be no easy answer, and it will require a ton of nuanced discussion, which admittedly isn't the easiest thing to have on the internet. An internet that gravitates towards extreme takes in fiery language to increase attention. But as we've seen with this initiative, and if you've been following the drama surrounding it, mainly when it pertains to a detractor of this initiative, Pirate Software, that drama farming that a lot of people do can be used to spread awareness, whether or not that is morally right to do so or not. But I also agree with Accursed Farms. People's opinions on the stance of Pirate Software and his objections to this initiative at this point no longer really matter, and it is up to people to sign this legitimately and legally to get this across the finish line. Now, that can only be done if you're a European citizen. Seeing as I'm not, I can't sign this thing. But what I can do is talk about it. And in my opinion, this is like step one for overall game preservation. It doesn't address every problem or concern that people have for this industry when it comes to preserving games. But when it comes to stuff like this, I believe incremental progression is still progression nonetheless. It can kickstart conversations, it can spread awareness, so that eventually down the line, we can extend stuff like this to other elements of game preservation and get those rolling down the proverbial hill to pick up their own steam and to build up on their own momentum. And when it comes to moments like this, an initiative like this, naturally, if you pick away at the various layers and you dig deep enough, you can probably find instances or problems that could arise as a result of things like stop destroying video games. Perhaps larger corporations are best in a position to actually respond to any legislation that is created as a result of this initiative, leaving smaller developers or publishers ill-equipped to be able to respond accordingly. Perhaps there are legitimate grievances or legitimate gripes when it comes to stuff like this. However, I don't believe just because this isn't a perfect scenario or a perfect solution to anything, I don't believe that necessarily means that it should be thrown away wholesale. Nothing is ever perfect, however, I believe the pros here outweigh the cons, and the idea that we should move closer to a world where games are better preserved, while it is an ideal, I do think it's a good ideal, especially one to strive for. Stop killing games isn't the entire discussion, nor is it the end of it. This is just the beginning, and while many people may view video games to be art, an opinion that I would also agree with, the industry still operates as a business because it is a business. And most of these companies aren't going to do something out of the goodness of their heart or a desire for a better industry. They're going to do the things that make them more money, the things that make the most financial sense, the things that impress shareholders more. Because at the end of the day, it is still a business, which is why you may get scattered specific examples of companies engaging in behaviors that better preserve games. Overall, if there isn't a reason to do it, companies will just act and behave in a way that make them more money. And preserving games, especially ones with online functionality or requirements, just keeping them online in perpetuity doesn't make financial sense. However, there are potential ways to keep these kinds of games semi-functional at least, such as private servers. But again, this circles back to that previous point I was talking about where this needs to lead to grander discussion as to how we're actually going to implement these ideas into this industry. And I think it's been really cool to see people just talk about how stuff like this could actually be implemented. I mean, heck, for the longest time when it concerns a game like World of Warcraft, if people wanted to play previous versions of that game, Blizzard didn't provide them until Classic came around. So people made private servers in order to play them. They weren't given an official go-ahead at anything like that, and quite often they were taken down. But is it right that the industry exists and functions in such a way to where game states like that can easily be left abandoned and forgotten and unplayable, or left to the whims of the companies whether or not they believe there to be a financial incentive to bring them back or not? There's also an element in the annex of this European Citizens Initiative that I really want to focus in on. We wish to invoke Article 17, Section 1 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. No one may be deprived of his or her possessions except in the public interest and in the cases and under the conditions provided for by law, subject to fair compensation being paid in good time for their loss. This practice deprives European citizens of their property by making it so that they lose access to their product an indeterminate/arbitrary amount of time after the point of sale. We wish to see this remedied at the core of this initiative. The whole reason these companies are able to do this is because, before even being able to play the game, you buy a license of said game. You don't technically own it, so it allows them to mess with it after that point of sale. Going back to the initiative, existing laws and consumer agencies are ill-prepared to protect consumers against this practice. The ability for a company to destroy an item it has already sold to the customer long after the fact is not something that normally occurs in other industries. With license agreements required to simply run the game, many existing consumer protections are circumvented. This practice challenges the concept of ownership itself, where the customer is left with nothing after quote-unquote buying a game. These are elements to the overall state of the industry that many people, myself included, have talked about over the last couple of years. I do not believe this to be an overall healthy state for the consumer, and it's a practice I see this industry increasingly embrace as the years go on. Heck, we just saw Steam actually have to disclose the fact you're not buying games or purchasing them yourself, you're getting a license. Look, the more you dig into this industry, the more murky a lot of things become. There's a lot of issues and a lot of concerns people have when it comes to the actual concept of ownership in the games industry right now. And I highly doubt this initiative is going to be able to effectively and adequately address every issue and concern that people have. Let alone the fact this only applies to Europe, by the way, or at least specifically the EU. But even then, the EU is still a massive market that can't simply be ignored. So the goal and the idea is that if actual policy change is able to happen in Europe, then a rippling effect would occur and places outside of Europe would also see the benefits of companies having to react to that legislation. That's the hope and the idea. I doubt there's a perfect solution to anything here. And I doubt that any solution that does get made and signed into law, if this does come to pass, is able to perfectly fix this industry or anything. There will be problems, there will be complications. However, as I've said before, I do not believe the current state of the industry with this status quo is a healthy one for the consumer. And even if it's flawed, I think this is a better direction to go in, and one that we should go in as an industry. I absolutely detest this current state of the industry, where people don't actually own the things they buy, and companies trying to get around these ideas by saying you only have a license. You're not actually purchasing a product. I don't believe that kind of behavior should be allowed. I think it is dangerously and wildly anti-consumer and sets really bad precedent for the future. One of the reasons so many people actually like the concept of physical games is because they actually own a physical product. They can hold it in their hands and say, you know what? This is mine. No one can come to my place and take this from me, right? It ain't gonna happen. Unless we want to, like, make a really weird, like, 80s action movie about it. Hey, Hollywood, hit me up. One man exists in a world where he just wants to play Xenosaga, but there's villains that lurk in the dark, seeking to take it from him. In this movie starring Jmulls from Jmulls Gaming, one man must rise up to defend what he holds precious. Okay, cringe aside, I don't believe that people that buy digital games shouldn't have the same protections, or at least the perceived protections, that people that buy physical games get. I am predominantly a PC player because I enjoy the PC platform the most. However, there's a big sword of Damocles over every PC player, because if Steam for some reason goes belly up tomorrow, well, say farewell to your entire library. I don't like the fact that sword of Damocles exists to begin with. I don't believe it's healthy, and I don't believe the entire industry should just exist on a knife edge, and everything that people actually bought should be subject to how a company performs in the future. This doesn't just extend, in my opinion, to always online games. It extends to every game you buy as a quote-unquote license. It's a disgusting practice that, in my opinion, should not be encouraged and should not be tolerated in this industry. And I want to see that entire idea and concept go the way of the dodo. I want it gone and hopefully one day forgotten. You know what? I don't want it forgotten. I want it to exist as a footnote in history, to remind people that we can never allow this to happen again. I know that sounds dramatic, but really, think about it. Imagine you bought a toaster and a company can just say, alright, no more toast for you, and just turns it off. That's stupid. If we don't allow it for stuff like that, why would we naturally allow it for things like this? You know, thinking about it, I got a game I actually do own, so what about an online physical game that I have? Let's check. Here's one. What about Halo 5? Yeah? I hate this game. Yeah? Don't get me wrong. I've talked so much crap about this game, it'll make your head spin. However, imagine if they turned the servers off for this game, say tomorrow, or at some point down the line. So the online parts of this game would become lost media. I don't think that is a state of the industry, even for games we don't like, even for games we've talked about before with Anthem, even for games we don't like. I don't believe this behavior should be encouraged or tolerated simply because we don't like a game. but allow the player and allow the consumers to be able to play the games they purchase. I don't believe that to be an unreasonable ask. Is it perfect? Better yet, is there a perfect solution to this? Probably not. But is there a solution that exists that is almost certainly preferable to the current status quo? Absolutely, in my opinion. And we should be having discussions and conversations as to how we arrive at said tomorrow. I don't believe that just because something has problems, it should be immediately discarded like yesterday's trash. I don't believe that is a mindset we should ever operate under, because it doesn't lead to meaningful change. It leads to stagnation and allows these companies to continue to engage in practices that are at the heart of the matter anti-consumer. And I don't believe just because you agree to some license or agree to some agreement that stuff like this should still be tolerated. And it's why I personally like the idea that initiatives like the European Citizens Initiative can happen to begin with, because if there's enough people kicking up a stink over this, they deserve to have their voices heard. It's why consumer protections exist to begin with, to protect the consumer from practices and business policies that they may not understand the entire consequences of. It's why we rarely see actual gamer boycotts actually achieve anything. Sometimes they do, don't get me wrong, sometimes they do, but a lot of the time, there's just way too many people out there that are unfamiliar with any of this stuff. They don't know and they don't care, they just want to play a game because they believe, hey, it's a video game, I'm just here to have fun. And those people should be protected too, not just the people that are aware of these business practices. I believe that to be just. I believe that to be reasonable. And that is why I hope stuff like Stop Destroying Games as a European Citizens Initiative, even if I'm not an EU citizen, I hope that succeeds. And while yes, they have technically crossed the 1 million signature threshold, it is far from over. As Accursed Farms talked about in an update video, link in the description down below to that, by the way, chances are there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to sign their own name. Look, I know it sounds stupid, but believe me, it's people, right? On top of that, with the amount of online momentum Stop Destroying Video Games has acquired, chances are there's people trying to spoof signatures. Those will also just be thrown out, along with the people that can't sign their own name correctly, or there's some other issue with their signature. So chances are this European Citizens Initiative is going to need well north of 1 million signatures to account for all the ones that are going to get thrown out because they're illegitimate. So if you are an EU citizen and you qualify to be able to sign this initiative, I would recommend doing so, because this can lead to actual change. It may not address everything right now, but it can lead to more discussion and more legislation down the line to further address these problems. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Please leave a comment down below with your thoughts, your opinions on Stop Killing Games, Stop Destroying Video Games, whatever you want to call it. I want to hear your thoughts, your opinions in the description down below. What problems do you expect this could run into? What solutions do you think could exist, or already exist, to address these concerns? I would love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. While you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future videos and content, and I greatly appreciate it. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok, Jmulls G, for even more content. I have a Discord in the description down below if you want to come and hang out with all the jabronis there. Would love to have you. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye, everybody, until we meet again.